First 50 overs of cricket in the ICC Champions Trophy 2025 behind us. We've got a couple of centurions to talk about in the form of Will Young, drafted perhaps late into the side, and he's announced himself, as has Tom Latham, as New Zealand smashed 320. 104 in the last 8 overs. They more than doubled what they had at the 30-over mark, where Pakistan thought perhaps they had a foot in the game. We look back at that first innings in Karachi on ESPN Cricket for Match Day with Sanjay Manjrekar, and we'll also hear from Uruj Mumtaz at Karachi and Shane Bond as he just puts enough liquid in him to stay up in the wee hours of the night in New Zealand. I will first go to Uruj Mumtaz, who's at Karachi, of course, to tell me how she feels about 320.
Yeah, I think a little too many. We were looking at the pitch earlier on, and I said it was runs. I even said, in fact, 320, by the way, if somebody remembers predictions. But it felt like the surface just held slightly and gripped slightly in the beginning. But the typical Karachi surface eased up, and it becomes better batting under lights. But I feel 20 too many. I think some field positions, I thought Harris probably wasn't at his best, and I hope it wasn't the side strain. But I think phenomenal from Latham and Young, and then Phillips doing what he did at the back end of the innings.
The perfect batting performance, a perfect template of 50 overs batting. Couple of wickets lost, Conway and Williamson. But then two guys dug in, got hundreds, but not at a strike rate of 70 or 80, at a strike rate of 90. And then Glenn Phillips giving the adrenaline that they needed. So when you look at that performance, it's just a reminder of the format first, this tournament. But if people are wondering how do we go about 50 overs cricket, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, it was the retro way of playing 50 overs cricket, similar to the times that you finished with and Bondi started.
More than retro way. We saw England struggle recently trying to play the modern way. I think this is the perfect kind of template and approach for 50 overs cricket.
And it looks like whoever they bring in, Bondi, whether it's Will Young, we know the quality of Tom Latham, it's not alien to them to play the perfect gears that 50 overs cricket demands.
Yeah, I think with Will Young, ODI cricket is probably his best format. His record's exceptional, and I think if you look through the New Zealand lineup, everyone's averaging, a lot of players averaging in the 40s, 50s. I think Tom Latham's got the lowest average at 35, and he's a very fine player. So I think that's the thing that makes a big difference, isn't it, in teams when you have depth, when you can really have a squad, when it's about who you're asking questions about, who you're leaving out, and you're leaving good players out. When you have those injuries that are always going to happen, or someone dips in form, someone can come in and take the place and perform. And Will Young, I thought today, he wouldn't have been thinking he was going to play, but what a hell of an innings he played.
It's going to be very hard to leave him out. I'm going to ask that question in a second. But let's spend some time on Will Young, who's the kind of batter I'm sure you will admire and appreciate. Wonderful in the test team when he had to fill Kane Williamson's shoes. And looks like he's just at home in 50
Yeah, I like all kinds of batters, Ronak. It's not just guys who have to play in a certain fashion. I just like batters who get runs that help the team, because sometimes you can get runs and not help the team. The strike rate there is crucial. He almost played like the anchor kind of innings, but perfectly paced. 94 is the strike rate. And I was impressed with him thoroughly when we saw him in India. I mean, the way he played on those turning pitches just grew in confidence through the series.
He's not going anywhere now from the playing 11, Bondi. Does that mean if Rachin was part of their first choice team, does he come in for Devon Conway suddenly?
Yeah, it's amazing how it flips, isn't it? It's hard to leave a man out against 100. And you would think Ravindra has to fit back into that lineup. So, yeah, Conway all of a sudden going from settled and in is under some pressure. It's a real headache for Gary Stead.
We spoke of the ability to play spin, and we'll come to what kind of spin they had in a second. But Tom Latham, standout innings for you. What stood out from that innings for you?
That it was all too easy for him, and I love the use of the pace as well. He's a guy who's played better quality of spin bowling, and overall, when you look at the Pakistani attack, I don't see any X factor. Now, Pakistan cricket has been, over the years, and they've had bowling attacks which had 2 or 3 outstanding bowlers. What I saw there was an insipid, almost bowling performance, so nothing to really trouble a guy of his class. That's Tom Latham.
Take that conversation forward, Aruj. As good as Latham was, Sanjay says too easy for him. Pakistan missing some kind of penetration or bite with the ball in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see that it was Rizwan, the roll of the dice. He gave it to the part-time spinners as well, who in tandem bowled together of 10 overs, didn't pick up a wicket. Abrar as well, barring that first wicket where I thought, I think Conway just didn't pick the wrong one. But barring that, there's no real Sanjay uses the right word. There's no real X factor. There's no one spinner that sticks out where the opposition is planning as to how do we don't lose wickets, but also how do we get runs away from that bowler. I think that was the case that Pakistan was missing. And Naseem, obviously, Haris, Shaheen together have been a while that the trio has really stepped up on a wicket that was looking conducive to batting. But on the contrary, Pakistan will have their work cut out when New Zealand spinners come to bowl. So I think Pakistan will continually have this problem throughout the tournament with their soft underbelly in that middle order with bat and their spin attack. I think both sides look slightly undercooked.
Let's take that conversation further. Haris is just making a comeback. Is it fair to say that we're just not seeing the same Shaheen Afridi and we haven't for a while? What's the story, Uruj?
Having said that we haven't seen the best of Shaheen Afridi. He probably is at his best since that injury. It's been a long time coming. His pace is slightly higher up as well. He's getting the ball to shape, but I think after that injury, it just hasn't been the same. He's tried too many things. Every time things haven't worked, he's quickly gone to different variations. What I think the one thing that he has let himself down is when there hasn't been any swing, and we've spoken about this for a couple of years now since his injury. When there hasn't been swing, what he doesn't do very quickly in terms of hitting that good hard length and going almost to that test match red ball length and just making it difficult with disciplined channels of bowling. I think he's far too he's always wanting to continue for a longer period, even when there's no swing and he gets hit for a few from obviously those half volleys up front. And then I don't think he just has enough in him to stick to those disciplined lengths post his injury. I think that is where he's faltered. And because when he doesn't pick up wickets in that power play, that rhythm seems to fall apart as well.
I want to ask something of Shane Bond. We've seen the Shaheen Afridi for a while now. The first time the Indian players and Indian commentators, viewers saw him was in that Asia Cup in Sri Lanka. And the one thing that is very noticeable, Bondi, is the speed in the air. If you go and, go back to Shaheen Afridi's best spells, you can see there was a different zip to the ball in the air. So the swing is there or may not be there as much, but the speed in the air has reduced considerably, isn't it?
It has, and I think that's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of injuries and then just playing more cricket. When you're young and you're fresh and you've got that energy, you can come in and bowl that 150 Ks, which we saw at the start of his career where he was devastating. And it doesn't matter who you are, after you've been in international cricket and the grind of international cricket for a period of time, then the pace tends to drop a little bit. And it can make a big difference, and that's where you've got to keep adding to your skill set. And when I look at Pakistan, particularly in the last sort of 10 overs, they generally are very one-dimensional. They bowl at the stumps, they don't do much with their field, whereas other teams now, are bowling wide line. I think Naseem Shah bowled the slow bounce a little bit, was really effective. But Ralph and Shaheen tend to attack the stump. So as a batting lineup, you can set up for that. New Zealand did and punished them. So you've got to start to look a little bit more outside the square. And I think for me, when Pakistan, that used to be a real strength of theirs as a side, the death bowling, I think with that slight more lack of pace now, obviously two balls, so not as much reverse swing, it's an area they're getting punished because they're a little bit one-dimensional in my opinion.
Yeah, I think extend on that point, Bondi, because we're going to go to that next. 104 runs in the last 8, lack of death bowling plans. Also, from what we figured, looked like Shaheen and Rizwan weren't even in sync with what the plan should be. Now, you earn $1 million for this, to prepare teams to how to bowl at the death and manage those situations. Go on.
Yeah, I think in general, you want to give your bowler options to bowl either at the wide line or at the stump. So the batsman's not quite sure what's coming. Fields that give you two options. I think you can also move your field around to sort of manipulate the batter's mindset. If the batsmen know that the length or the line is going to be straight the whole time, then they can back away from the stumps, which you saw New Zealand do. They paddled the ball. Now, if Pakistan had fired one wide, all of a sudden the batsman's not quite sure where it's coming. It makes it a hell of a lot more difficult. And if you look at someone like Jasprit Bumrah, who you'd say is by far and away the best bowler, he'll use changes of pace, he'll use the bouncer, the slow bouncer, the wide ball, and it's how he puts that together with his field that makes him so effective. And I feel like there's more in the tank for a Naseem Shah, a Shaheen Afridi and a Haris Ralph, that they could be more well-rounded bowlers if they did those things.
Uruj, anything to add to that? And the positive, I think, fair to say, was Naseem Shah?
Yeah, I think even in the Tri Nation, I thought he was the pick of the trio of those Pakistani quicks. He's one of those where he can consistently come in and hit a good length, especially earlier on in the piece with the new ball and towards the back end. I think he's a little bit more flexible with his stance. But I completely agree with Bondi. I think as a trio, they sort of need to evolve. The fame that came too quickly to them, I think it just has restrained them in opening up to slightly more development of skill. Also, I mean, we touched on the amount of cricket they play and young and fresh. Shine's still only 24. So if you look at it from an age point of view, he's still fairly young. Naseem is also only 22 years of age. So they've got a long way in them. But with the way the modern game is evolving, they'll have to do far better because towards the back end, especially in this tournament on these placid tracks in Pakistan, there'll be a lot of runs coming.
Do you see Shaheen Afridi reaching the peaks that he had in the past, or you see this now, the Shaheen Afridi will see for the rest of his career somebody whose pace will never come back and he'll find ways to still be an effective bowler? Maybe Bondi could also venture in with an opinion on this, because you wonder whether he's just lost that earlier trait or characteristic that he had, the quick ball in the air.
Uruj first.
I think. I think he can. I think you've got to manage a player. I think you've got all these formats and so many, competitions going on. I know he's been going over to play in the 100, so all that calendar that's already condensed gets even busier. So it just comes down to the coach is sitting down going, prioritising series, giving him a chance to rest, to recondition, to get strong. And if he does that, and they allow all these young bowlers to do that, then I think they can come back and bowl at that top-end pace. But over the course of a year, if you're not getting those breaks, then it's very, very difficult. And that's very subtly that pace drops, and it does impact that penetration.
We do free him up for the IPL if that's any help. But for what it's worth, let's go to Uruj if she'd like to add to that. It also seemed like while we're discussing their death bowling, Abrar Ahmed also bowled in the final 10, bowled inside the first 10 too. You could tell us about that too, Uruj?
Yeah, I think it was a brave decision from Rizwan. I think it probably came from the fact that he wasn't finding the penetration he'd hoped for his quick bowlers up front. And to be fair to Abrar, I mean, he gave away 47. He picked up one important wicket at the top of the order. So from his point of view, although that he sort of lacked that venom approach or that bowling, that zing in his bowling, I think to be fair to him, he did his part right. So coming back to Shaheen Afridi, I think Vakar Yunus spoke about him over the last 6 months, that he feels that there's a slight tweak in his action post his recovery. Maybe that has to do with the drop in pace as well, because Bakar is very open about this. He says that obviously that swing with pace is obviously far more effective and penetration wise in terms of wicket taking ability, something that Sanjay picked up on as well. And that pace, hopefully, if he can get that action to come back onto what Bakar feels might be the case as well.
Yeah, I remember Waqar, actually interesting that his name came up, and he was watching Irfan Pathan. After Irfan Pathan had a great start to his career, he saw him in Pakistan and then saw him 2 or 3 years later in India, and one look at him and he said in Hindi, "Yaar, ye to khatam lag raha hai." As in, he seems like he's just lost his pace, and that khatam lag raha hai means he didn't feel that he'll bounce back and get those skills that he had earlier. Sometimes you worry about Shaheen Afridi, whether he'll ever get his mojo back. But having said that, death bowling is going to be tough when you have set batters batting in the last 10. And that's why you need wickets in the middle. It just helps the cause. That's why India, when they have a Kuldeep Yadav or a Chahal in the past, and now their spinners getting wickets, you don't have set batters batting in the death. When you have a guy batting on 100 and another one in the 50s, hard to stop those guys.
Yep, fair enough. Still time for Shaheen Afridi. Uruj Mumtaz mentions he is young, but it's been a tough start for him. It's not been tough for New Zealand. This could have still been a 280, 290. There were 148 after 30 overs. Always nice to have Glenn Phillips and the kind of player that he is.
Yeah, and I love the way, the big shots were coming almost at the very last minute. It wasn't like he was setting himself up. There was no premeditation. He was looking to play aggressively, and if the ball was in the slot, extension of the arms and the ball disappeared. He played some great shots. And can you imagine, this is a guy who can bowl 10 overs in a match as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've always admired Glenn Phillips, and today's innings was just the perfect kind of ingredient that New Zealand needed.
Likes it there as well. Bondi got 100 recently in the Tri-Series. Remember Dan Vittori saying about Phillips, he's just a gun. He's the kind of guy you want in your team. Every format, there's very little he cannot do, but this is the best he's batting now.
Yeah, he's high energy, isn't he? And that's what you want in a team, especially in the field. I think with Phillips, and I think we saw it again today, if he can get 10 to 15 balls to get set, he's a much better player. He doesn't move his feet a lot, and after that sort of 10 to 15 balls, he starts to get the weight transfer right, and then he's extremely destructive. So New Zealand have been fortunate that he's had that extra time, particularly in ODI cricket. He gets a little bit of extra time, and when he does, then he's a very difficult man to bowl to. And again, I thought some of the hitting today was exceptional.
Yeah.
All right. Let's try and imagine what Aqib Javed is saying right now in that dugout. Uruj Mumtaz, probably 30 short. We chased 350 recently against South Africa on this ground. So, advantage Pakistan.
Well, I mean, historically, the Karachi surface does play better under lights. Dew or not, apparently there was a little bit of dew here last night. I don't know if I can still see the flags moving around, so if there's any wind, the dew might not play such a big factor. But dew or not, something happens under lights, the surface becomes a lot more better for batting. So two things Pakistan can draw inspiration from is that 350 plus chase against South Africa. The wicket here does better. But the problem Aqib Javed probably has at the moment is who's opening with Babar. I think that's the conversation. Who's putting the hand? Who's the guy who's going to put his hand up? Because I think Fakhar cannot open the innings because he was out of the field for that long. So whether they send Saud Shakil in or Babar or Rizwan, the captain puts his hands up, the two of them open the T20 format, I'm not quite sure. I think that's the conversation Aqib Javed is having right now.
Who would you've named some options, who would you like to see open now that Fakhar can't?
I think Saud Shakil can open. He's opened in the T20 version of the game, not for Pakistan, but in franchise mode as well. He likes, according to himself, he has better numbers against spin, but he likes pace. He likes the power play. He's a very conventional, very orthodox batter and very good with his technique. So with the new ball, he could be great with Babar. The problem with that is you almost have two anchors opening, and if you have to chase 320, you need someone to make use of that power play. So whether they send Khushdil Shah in, again, someone who likes to take the power play on, maybe it's worth the gamble, like for like, both left-handed, Saud and Khushdil. But those are the only two options, unless, again, Rizwan puts his hands up. And I think, I don't think he will, because our middle order, like I said, slight soft underbelly. He and Salman will want to stick behind. So I think the only two options Aqib has the moment are Saud and Khushdil Shah.
All right, just in case you missed that, third ball of the innings. Fakhar Zaman ran till the boundary and did some sort of damage to his back. He was out for a significant amount of time. By the time he came in, about an hour and a half or so later, somewhere close to the 30th over, he had to be on the field till 6:26 local time if he had to open. That's not happening, so he cannot bat any higher than 5. That's what we understand as things stand. Now, Fakhar did score a match-winning score when these two teams met in the World Cup. So there is that for you to take into your considerations. Let's talk about New Zealand's plans with the ball. Will Young, speaking Bondi at halftime, said it actually wasn't as easy when they dropped the length back and slowed it up. It was sticking in the surface. Uruj has said, though, it might change in the second innings. What are New Zealand's plans?
Oh, I think they'll keep it reasonably simple. I thought the wicket wasn't completely easy. It looked like there were bare patches. It was a little bit inconsistent. There was definitely some turn there. So they'll just be talking about, let's hit that back of a length, let's bowl nice and straight, back of a length at the start, and hope that there's something or some inconsistencies in that wicket. And then I think they'll just try to squeeze Pakistan with their spin through the middle, and hope that there's with the wind around, there's perhaps a lack of that dew factor and the ball will turn. And if the ball does turn, then I think Pakistan will find it pretty hard going.
And try and get the spinners a little early, because if the dew sets in, they are slightly hampered by the wet ball. So I always believe the seamers have done a good job with the new ball. Try and get your spinners in, and I think they've got some quality spinners, in-form spinners. While the pitch is dry, that's another option. And the outfield.
Yeah, Bondi, just break it down for dummies like me on this new look New Zealand attack. Who takes the new ball? What are traditionally the roles?
Yeah, great question. With Nathan Smith playing, it's an interesting one. So I think they'll go with Will O'Rourke. I think with Fakhar Zaman being perhaps down at 5 and the middle order being, the top order being the strong, I think they'll go with O'Rourke and try to get the wickets up front with him hitting the wicket hard at 90 miles an hour and perhaps some seam movement, which we saw in the early overs with the Pakistan bowlers. And then as I said, they may use Mitch Santner perhaps a touch earlier, or Nathan Smith will come in to close out that power play. But if they can get through, Matt Henry will traditionally bowl 5 or 6 overs, so they shouldn't need Nathan Smith until after that power play. So I'm expecting O'Rourke and Henry to take the new ball.
Right, Uruj, since you've talked up your prediction skills, nailing the 320. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 things to predict for us now. Firstly, how do we see Babar Azam going? Plenty that will be expected from him, especially without Fakar. And how do you see this game going?
Well, I think Babar's in for a big one, and the only way Pakistan getting over the line, I said this earlier as well, he will have to hold one end down and hope for people to bat around him. The other thing Babar can't afford is to go too slow, so he'll have to keep up with the rate. But Karachi surface, Babar's record, I'm banking him to get a good one here. The only problem with, again, Pakistan is that they can't leave too many for Fakhr to do towards the back end. Tayyib Tahir and Khushdil Shah haven't been out of the side for way too long, haven't played any big innings, and 320 is a big ask. So I think New Zealand have enough.
Yeah, the reason we're discussing this, we touched upon it in our build-up content as well. It's not been happy hunting for Babar Azam in the last couple of years. It's not like he's failing to get a score. He's just not getting the big score we expect of a player of Babar's caliber. He's averaging in the 30s. You need more than that. Since 2023, in fact, it's 45 in 33 innings. But the beast that he was in 2019 to 2022, that's where things have just gone a bit sour. And it's been a while since we saw a triple-figure score from him.
What you can see there is getting his 50s, because the difference between the 50s of 2019 to 2022 is not much, just not the big ones. So that is what he wants, a big one to just get that meter rolling.
I know you hate predictions, so I will give you an extra few seconds.
But this one I'd love to make.
Oh, you want to make a prediction?
Yeah, because if Pakistan chases this, then you start looking at Pakistan in different light. I've seen enough to know that bowling attack is not going to be their huge strength. But if they chase this, at least batting will be their strength. It looks unlikely, but I'd love to see that happen.
You can't use ifs and buts in a prediction.
No, New Zealand win.
Oh, okay. New Zealand to win.
By 30, 40 runs, if not more.
30, 40. So that looks like an easy win for New Zealand. Shane Bond, you concur?
Yeah, I do. I think Shaquille and Rizwan are the key. That left-hand, right-hand combination through the middle need to put on a big partnership because they're both quality players. But if they don't, they can't touch New Zealand. I think New Zealand are going to win comfortably.
And on that note, thank you to Shane Bond. Bondi, all set. It's going to be, 3 a.m. by the time this game is done? But I'm sure you can't get your eyes off ODI cricket at that hour.
I'm going to hit that coffee.
6 a.m. Thank you very much to Ruj Mumtaz from the National Stadium in Karachi and Sanjay Manjrekar with us in studio. We will be back to see who has prevailed in the opening game of the ICC Champions Trophy 2025. Join us for post-match analysis on ESPN Cricket for Match Day.